And I also like went to
but I live in Maine.
I'm like it happened.
Hello, everyone. We are going to continue with our last session to close. So it would be great then to have this group about sustainable systems remaining the built and lived environment by Donny DeVolt, Cheyenne Ford, Alexandra, Andrew, El Boss, and Alex Wilson. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Okay, so everybody, we're going to start with a call and response to wake us up. Because we just ate all that, carby food. So we're going to say, show us what community looks like. We're going to be like, show us what community looks like. And you're going to say, this is what community looks like. Are y'all ready? Okay. 2 times. Yeah. Show us what community looks like. This is what community looks like. Show us what community looks like. This is what community looks like. Thank you. That is taken, it's repurposed from what you would see at a protest. And so while none of our projects, are on the streets protesting, we do protest in a different kind of way. So we do change work behind the scenes. And so we're very excited to share that with you today.
Thank you, Elle. Okay, so as you can see, our group's theme. Oh, I didn't do that. Great. Now that we're all alive, awake, alert, and enthusiastic again, our group's theme is sustainable systems, reimagining the built and lived environment. So I think we all know that we live on a finite planet, and every year we're using more resources and more energy to continue living the way we become accustomed to living. Each one of our projects dives into the systems that make up the world around us. And so we're going to explore what it takes to construct the buildings that we live and work in, the power plants that affect the communities around us, the food systems that grow and nurture that we share with each other, and also how we can work on expanding, sharing information between the neighbors of our community.
From New Mexico to Arizona, Colorado, and all the way to Chi-Town, aka Chicago. Our projects span a variety of communities and places, but there are a few common problems that we're all facing. From resource efficiency, communication, accessibility, inclusivity, lack of engagement, to affordability, there are numerous barriers that make it difficult to create sustainable systems. Through reimagining our built and lived environment, we aim to provide solutions to our unique community needs.
So the built environment refers to human-made conditions, which include the buildings we live in, the distribution systems that provide us with water and electricity, and the transportation systems that we use to get place to place. And these modified structures provide people with living, working, and recreational spaces. And globally, the quantity of material consumption and cost continues to increase from constructing, maintaining, and operating the built environment.
All right, so the lived environment can refer to our daily interactions regarding social, economic, political, and spiritual aspects of humanity and all other entities surrounding us. As conflict arises in the modern world, especially in relation to greed, proponents of change are needed to advocate for the general well-being of our population. Relating and connecting to the communities we work with has been essential for each of us to better understand how our deliverables will impact those who we intend to serve, and how we can empower these individuals in the future.
So our projects are going to be focusing on these parts of our civilization, a little bit of a change of pace from what we've done so far today. So from the ways in which we improve upon our built environment to how we continue to construct it, Donnie, Cheyenne, and Allie will focus on how the materials we use and the systems that we navigate impact the earth that supports them. And then Alex, L, and myself will dive a bit deeper into how we live within those spaces. So sort of the second piece of that. And we'll also be sort of exploring how we can live better together, cooperating and sharing our lives in those precious resources. Donnie is going to kick us off.
You, Andrew? All right, my name is Donnie Duvall. My project embodied and operational impacts of Habitat for Humanity homes in the Gunnison Valley. So Habitat for Humanity is a global scale nonprofit organization that's really believes that affordable housing is critical to keeping strength and good communities strong. So our local chapter has done a really great job in the last few years in pushing the boundaries of what high performance building, energy efficiency building looks like and getting that word out to the community and beyond. They've done so well at this that in 2020, they won best in low carbon footprint, and 2021, best in sustainability from Habitat for Humanity International. So why do we need this? So currently 27% of the global greenhouse gas emissions come from the operations of buildings. That's lighting, plugs, outlets, heating, cooling, hot water, all the appliances that we use, everything that it takes to run and operate the buildings that we live and work in. Another 13% of that is the embodied carbon that it takes to actually construct our infrastructure. That also includes roads and that sort of things. Most of that 13% comes from concrete, steel, and aluminum, which are high embodied carbon materials because they generally take a lot of heat to produce. There's also a study by Architecture 2030 that is estimated that by 2060, we're going to double our built environment footprint. So we really have a long way to go to try to minimize what this impact is over time. My project's going to focus on a life cycle analysis. Habitat for Humanity has 5 homes over on South 6th Street in Gunnison that are a really cool kind of baseline to compare each one. They build 1 home a year, and all these homes are about 1,100 square feet. They use different construction techniques and different mechanical and electrical systems. So the first home actually has gas hookup. The second home is all electric. And then the third, fourth, and fifth, they started implementing high performance materials, local materials, and trying to reduce the carbon footprint of the buildings. And so what I'm gonna do is an energy model on each home to figure out what the predicted needs are for the home. And then we've already installed Emporia monitoring devices on each of the circuits and breaker panels. And so we can get a finite idea. I can see lifetime data of what heating uses are, hot water, outlets, lights, stuff like that. So I can take that back and compare it to the energy models that were done to see how accurate those are over time. Combining that all together in the life cycle analysis, we'll take all of the materials that are used to construct the building, from the raw material extraction through transportation, processing, and the construction of the buildings. And that's going to give us our embodied carbon side of it. And then the operational carbon, I'll have real-time data to actually put into that and figure out over the lifetime estimated 60 years or so of the building, that what the entire impact of that building is compared to the other buildings on that site. So we can use that to make better decisions for future home builds. Some of the tools that I'm going to use, OpenLCA is a free open source lifecycle analysis software. I got a Haley grant for the EcoInvent database, which is a collection of environmental product declarations that I will incorporate into the lifecycle analysis. SketchUp, OpenStudio, and Energy Plus are all a suite that gets combined to do the energy modeling. And then the Emporia energy monitoring devices are already installed. They're pretty simple to use and see cool things. So we're hoping, I'm going to do a comparison of each of these homes so that Habitat for Humanity can make better, more efficient decisions in their future builds. And then also trying to use that to get out and spread education throughout the community, the building industry, architectures, homeowners, because really there's just not enough knowledge about how much our buildings use and the decisions we make in why we construct things, why architecture is done in a certain way. So for the more information we can get out to those policymakers and organizations, overall, the better, lower impact that we can have on our built environment. So thanks. Next up is Cheyenne.
Awesome. Hello, I'm Cheyenne. My project is called Equitable Energy Future. I will be working throughout areas of Arizona. I will mostly be working remote, but hopefully I'll get out there. And I will be partnering with the Social Justice and Engineering Initiative. They are a local nonprofit based in engineering needs and also environmental justice, which are two things that I am very passionate about. So the focus is the different 17 gas and oil fired peaker plants throughout Arizona that provide energy for the state. And the area of Phoenix metropolitan is about 1.62 million people, which is a lot of people to provide energy for. My focus will be on peaker plants, which are basically to offset the energy needs during high use seasons, such as the summer. But the downside of peaker plants is they emit a lot more pollutants into the air and into the communities that surround them. And they are only used about 3% of the time. So anywhere from like minutes to hours in a day. And normally they are just offline. So that is what I'll be focusing on. Sweet. So the problem with peaker, 4 major issues: aging. 12 of the 17 plants are over 45 years old. Next, inefficiency. 14 of those plants are extremely inefficient. One of those plants even has admitted to using more energy than they actually produce, which is not good at all. And then infrequently used, same thing. They are only online for 3% of their energy needs, which is not good at all. So I'm hoping to provide some solutions in how we can make that better. And next, pollution is what this graph is representing, the communities that live around these plants. So as you can see from this graph, it talks about the minority population and then the low income population. And as you can see, most of the plants are surrounding low income and minority populations. So that is what I will be focusing on. So what's next? Currently this summer, I have done a lot of research and reading reports of the impacts of other areas, such as, I believe one of the reports was based in Chicago, and the communities there and how they were impacted by these plants. And this graph shows basically like equity and how that is impacting those plants. And for my project, I'll be focusing on the West Phoenix and Agua Fria, which are the 2 largest plants on this graph. So those 2 communities are being really impacted by these peaker plants in a number of areas. So the 3 areas that we're focusing on are health indicators, so such as like asthma and cardiovascular, all of those things. And then for the environmental burden, that's more so of like the actual pollutants that are being let out into the air. And then demographics such as age, race, things of that nature. Next steps, so I will be working with SJEI and also a student who is in the MSc program, Dagny, because she is a part of this organization. And we are planning to do some stakeholder interviews and basically interview people who are located within those 2 communities of Agua Fria and West Phoenix, located near those plants. And then I will also be putting together some reports of just doing a side-by-side comparison just for those 2 specific plants. And these reports will be presented to hopefully the main energy provider, which is SRP, the Salt River Project. They are one of the main energy providers in Arizona, almost said Colorado, in Arizona. And they also have some plants up here. I don't think I included them, but they have 2 proposed plants, and one of them being in a historically Black community located in Randolph, Arizona. And last year, that decision was overturned by the state, but then SRP sued the state, and now they basically just bribed the community. And they're like, we're going to do less damage. And the wording is extremely vague. So those are the areas I will be focusing on. Let's go to New Mexico with Ali.
Okay, hi, I'm Allie, and I'm going to introduce the nonprofit that I've been working with called Veterans Off Grid. This nonprofit started in 2017 when Ryan Timmermans purchased 50 acres in Carson, New Mexico, which is just out on the mesa past the Earthships. And he had the mission of tackling homelessness specifically for veterans through promoting and building sustainably off grid. Just a little background on him. Ryan served in the U.S. Army as an intelligence analyst and psychological operations specialist. He completed multiple tours in Afghanistan, both as a soldier and a contractor. And so as a veteran, he really created this nonprofit organization to restore a sense of purpose and community to veterans in need. And just a little statistic, 1 in 10 American homeless people are said to be veterans. And according to the 2021 Veterans Profile that was put out by the New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions, veterans make up 9.8% of Taos County. And so projects at Veterans Off Grid are really geared towards addressing challenges like housing and food security in a way that has a local impact long term. And so for homelessness and mental health, these are 2 organizations they partnered with. The first is through Western Interstate Commission on Higher Education and the Department of Veteran Affairs. And they implemented the Together with Veterans Rural Veteran Suicide Prevention Program in Taos County. And then there is also the Taos Collaborative for Housing Stability. And this collaboration helps to assist veterans find housing stability and other navigations. And for food insecurity, in 2021, Veterans Off Grid did receive their first revenue from their farming program. This organic produce comes out of both their Hoop House greenhouse and their Wallapini greenhouse, which is an underground greenhouse. And they're producing all year round and selling it to local restaurants, CSAs, all of that. And then for the education and projects, Ryan co-created the UNM Taos Construction Technology Program, so University of New Mexico Taos. And the program coordinator is Mark Goldman. And basically this program provides a year-long course on foundational hands-on training in carpentry, electricity, plumbing, welding, you name it, just alternative methods within the building and construction industry. And so from June 12th to June 17th this year, I was able to participate as well in the first ever alternative construction course. And this was offered through UNM Taos in partnership with Veterans Off Grid. It was 4 credited hours, completely funded by Chevron, and for the benefit of the nonprofit Veterans Off Grid. We also earned a OSHA 10 certification, like a safety training throughout the week, and we ended up creating, which I'll show in another slide, it's almost done, the Healing Pavilion, which is a 400 square foot kind of healing center community space built with slip straw mostly. And so on the next one, it goes. Are you supposed to? Oh, okay. Okay, so here are some of the green buildings that are finished at Veterans Off Grid. There's 7 of them. If you see up here, there's the Hyper Adobe Roundhouse over here. These are all the first 2 people do live in them. And then there's a Super Adobe in the middle, and that is the Wallapini over there. Okay. And so for this project, I was able to create a preliminary survey for this course just to see kind of what you expect to achieve from this course. That was one of the questions. And as you can see, the options were OSHA certification, legality, coding and permitting knowledge, learning alternative construction, hands-on experience, camaraderie, and the fact that it was a bottom-up build. So in the bottom right corner is where we're at kind of right now. A little bit more is done. But as you can see, all those bales are compacted slip straw that we made. And then on the top, we are also finishing up an earthship that has been in the process this last year. And so ultimately, my project is to encourage students through creating a syllabus with my mentor of a potential fellowship opportunity to go and live off grid and really get experience in different types of green building. And with that, I will send it over to Andrew.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Wernan. I'm in the global sustainability track. And my project focuses on a number of sort of wicked problems in this valley, a lot of things that Allie and Donnie had touched on. So affordable housing is a big problem here. A lot of us are probably living and experiencing that, or at least have in the past. According to the State of the Union or the community report a couple of years ago, we need 960 new affordable housing units to keep up and catch up with the valley's growth by 2026. That came from 2021, so we made some progress from then. And the affordable housing problem is also difficult because the houses here are also not very sustainable or efficient. A lot of them are really, really old, don't meet code, brutally cold in the winter, and could stand with some energy improvements, as a lot of us know. So these problems are tied to a couple other things in the valley, such as like increased migration. A lot of it's part of the work from home movement. A lot of it that creates a lot of strain and increased construction demands and urban spread. And then that leads to a pricing people out. And so we have a shortage of skilled laborers and tradespeople, and that burden is also felt in the service industry and in nonprofits and kind of all from all levels, including here at Western with students and faculty. So my project, I guess one more thing is that puts a lot of strain on not only people's wallets and their finances, but also our community cohesiveness, as we have people coming and leaving and sense of place. And but there are things that we can do to change the way that we live in this environment. So, rather than focusing on the ways that we're going to continue to grow and build, we can focus on the structures that we already have and all that embodied carbon that Donnie was talking about, and how we can use what's already been spent and maybe make that better. So my project is going to focus on 3 spaces in the Gunnison Valley that create a sort of housing triangle that also have ulterior needs for the organizations. All 3 of these spaces were gifted to Cold Harbor Institute and Western Colorado University by the Butch Clark family for these purposes. So firstly, starting at the top, we have Cold Harbor. So the Cold Harbor Homestead Project is one that Western students have worked on quite a bit in the past. This one is different from the other 2 in that it's rural, and historically it's been used a lot through time as a gathering place, a place for tradition and meeting of people from pre-Ute times to Ute peoples, and now to Euro-American and to present day. And Cold Harbor really wants to make this space returning to its roots and honoring that history, while also being a model of sustainability. So there are existing structures there, and we'll get into that a little bit. And the Georgia House and the Clark House are both located in town, one of which houses students currently, and the other one is Butch Clark's current residence. And the Georgia House has a lot of historical value as an old hospital and a morgue. It's a very, very beautiful property and structure. And it also needs a lot of work to meet the energy and sustainability needs that we now see that we need from it today. So my involvement will be with all 3 of these projects in different capacities. So as for the Cold Harbor Homestead, this is going to look like a fairly extensive community engagement process of working sort of at all levels of society with individuals, with Cold Harbor's nonprofit partners, both existing and additional, to work with who can use a space for events, for workshops, for gathering, for community building, and to what extent will they be involved. And then once we know this, we can work to more accurately refine the design of the space. A lot of students have worked on this in the past, such as is in the bottom right diagram here. This is a MEM project a couple of years ago using Earthship inspired principles. And then eventually working with these partners to attain funding to try and create a diverse and robust funding structure. And the Georgia House and the Clark House have more immediate needs that are more physical, such as doing energy audits, retrofitting, making existing structures historical and not as historical, as close to maybe carbon zero as we can, and using renewable energies, and what can you do with existing structures. So it's going to be a bit of a learning journey. And so all these work together to create what I envision and we envision to be a sort of a cooperative housing network that'll house students, our nonprofit partners who are struggling with that, to put a roof over our heads, but also build community, both internally, bonding at these places using cooperative living, eco-village type principles, and also working outwardly in the community to bridge and make a stronger community scaling up. Thank you. And we will pass it over to Elle.
So I'm Elle. My project is building capacity for gardening and communal living at the Lutheran School of Theology in Chicago. This is the space that I live currently. It's a graduate housing space. I feel very lucky because we live in this beautiful area that's really like a hub for urban agriculture. And so there's a lot of cool places to learn from. And so this is a lot of my stakeholders. This is my community that I live in. And so there's a lot of challenges that I have, and there's a lot of strengths that I have. And so some of the challenges that we're working with is a lack of structure. That's probably the most important one that I'm going to be facing. When I got my job as the garden coordinator, they literally showed me 15 plots that are right outside my graduate housing, and they were like, there you go. And so I'm going to be building some structure so that the next person who takes my role isn't as lost and alone as I was. And then some of the strengths, and this is not a comprehensive list, by the way, but some of the strengths that I'm really hoping to, dive into is our diversity. We are, about half and half international students and domestic students, which is really exciting, especially when it comes to like urban gardening, like what can we learn in terms of like how food is produced. And then because we have this garden space, can we create a compost that's right outside? Right now we have city compost, but then we have a food pantry that's right on campus, but we don't talk to each other. Like, why aren't we talking to each other? So there's just like a lot of things that I think is really awesome. And then public church higher education institution, that's basically like the institution wants to be, a public church means outside of the scope of the church. And so that's basically like without the walls of the church. And so I find that a garden is the perfect place for that to happen, for the cross-pollination of, people who are religious and are not religious to find coexistence. And then just last year, the institution made an anti-racism and inclusivity goals. And I think this is a great stepping stone to start as we start talking about food justice and food insecurity in our community. So this is the anticipated deliverables. As I said, the garden coordinator position developed. I really want to find resources both outside of our institution and inside of our institution to pass on and stop the gatekeeping from happening. And then continuity plans for the 3 different sites. Last year I got a $7,000 grant and I got to expand, and I didn't really think about what that meant. And so now there's 2 extra church communities that are like 30 minutes away from me in opposite directions that like they now have garden spaces, but they don't have any kind of like structure. So that's going to be a part of the plan. And then better community involvement through listening sessions and assessments to make sure that we're meeting the needs. Here's a few little maps that I made. And as you can see, this is the first year that we actually had a community garden aspect. Usually just the international students take claim over a plot. And then a lot of plots go to waste because the domestic students don't know what they're doing. So this year we really instigated a family plot style / community plot style, which is a real fun experiment, and I look forward to seeing like how that went and what we can learn from it. That is it, and with that, it's Alex's turn.
All right, cool. Well, hi, I'm Alex. This is not really. Yep. There we go. Okay. Hi, I'm Alex, and I think I talked to some of you in the Reimagining project session a couple days ago about this, but you get to hear it again. So my project is with the Gunnison Valley Home Energy Advancement Team. And with them, I am going to be implementing certain outreach efforts and also conducting an analysis of that in 2024. So the GB Heat program is a subsect of the Gunnison Valley Regional Housing Authority. And essentially our mission with them is to increase energy efficiency. And in turn with that, we hope to increase household comfort and affordability. And we do that by marketing and even facilitating certain federal, state, and local programs related specifically to energy upgrades, installing those, and also certain energy bill pay assistance programs. But as Andrew mentioned a little bit, we do have some pretty significant challenges in the valley and barriers towards getting more servicing out there and getting more homes serviced. This includes the ongoing housing crisis, our frigid climate, rural accessibility, and I think our biggest challenge right now is probably instilling a sense of trust within our community. Some of these programs weren't as easy to apply to 10 years ago as they are today, so we really have to continually work to build that sense of trust here. All right. So we received a pretty substantial grant for outreach this year, which is why my position is even possible. Yeah, which has been great. That came from Energy Outreach Colorado, which is a nonprofit out of Denver, who support the marketing for programs like GB Heat statewide. Yeah, so that is why my position came about. And me and my community sponsor, Giza Michael, we chose the main purpose or main goal of this project to be the implementation and analysis of outreach efforts. So the majority of these deliverables that you see up here, they're going to be wrapped up by the end of 2023, like right around the holidays. And at that point in the new year, that's when we are going to start conducting an analysis of those efforts. So how is that going to be done? It could look like a lot of different things, to be frank. Storytelling, case studies, surveys, interviews, the whole lot. That's still being worked out, the kinks of that. But yeah, that's what that could look like. But what's more immediate is me getting these deliverables completed. So we recently started a 12-month contract with KBUT, which is a local radio station, for them to get underwriting messaging about GB Heat out there. I think that started at the first of this month. So that's kind of getting off the ground, getting done. We're also going to focus advertisements in 2 of our local newspapers about the Colorado Affordable Residential Energy Program, which is our most popular and most accessible program, I would say, along with 2 case studies of past participants, ideally 1 English, 1 Spanish. And then we've also got some roundtable discussion type events in the works. Essentially what that would be is us inviting past participants to talk about their experience with GB Heat, whatever program they may have been serviced by, just to give a realistic perspective to our greater community about what that looks like and the benefits or the shortcomings or whatever it may be. And then to my surprise, we actually had some really enthusiastic past clientele who offered to let us do like home tours, like showcasing their upgrades. I did not expect that. But yeah, that would be really cool. That is possibly in the works for this fall. And then there's several great food assistance programs in the Valley, either being food delivery or pickup. And that is the Food Pantry, Mountain Roots, a bunch of these different groups. So our marketing materials are going to be included in those boxes or at those physical locations. And then just distributing our marketing materials to other local organizations, either at their physical location or by digital means, whatever they may publish. And the graphics on here, this is one of our case studies that was completed last year by Jacob Hernandez, who was previously not exactly in this exact project, but he did do case studies as part of his. And then over here is actually install of perimeter insulation that would go under a mobile home typically. All right, and here are a bunch of the stakeholders and partners that have already committed to being a part of this project. I am very, very lucky to have all these people committed to this and, you know, able to take the time. It's been awesome, yeah. But yeah, I think that's about all I got. I do want to say a quick thank you to a couple specific groups and people. Energy Outreach Colorado for giving this program a chance to increase our outreach efforts. The Haley Fund, who is also supporting said outreach efforts. Yeah, Western as a whole, the MEM community. My advisor, Dr. Zanatel, which many of you will meet soon, I'm sure. Been very helpful with getting my proposal together and all that this summer. And yeah, the MEM community as a whole. I always feel a lot of love and kindness with you all. So I really appreciate that, seriously. And I think we can open it up to questions, yeah.
This question's for Cheyenne. So Cheyenne, I'm so fascinated by your project and I have so many questions, but my main interest is, do you know if there's been previous interviews done with this particular community that's being polluted in this way? And if not, how do you anticipate establishing enough trust to interview participants? And also, how are you selecting your participants?
Great question. To repeat Kelsey's question, how do I go about doing the stakeholder interviews? Have stakeholder interviews been done before? And how do I plan on gaining trust from community members? Correct? Okay, sweet. I'm not sure exactly if stakeholder interviews have been done with the 2 plant areas that we are focusing on. But I know that the other area that I talked about, the Randolph community, a lot of community members there have been interviewed. There are articles online of the community is very fired up and very passionate about this topic. And we're really excited last year when they were like, we're not going forward with this. And so it was really a big blow this year when SRP decided to go through with that project. And as for getting like trust from community members, I definitely want to be able to go there and like sit down and talk with people and talk about like why it's important to get personal stories out there, because I feel like personal touch is always really important. Kind of like what Diego Plata was talking about and how like showing up in those community meetings is very important. And so just I feel like having those conversations and it being like a little bit more informal is a good way to gain trust.
This is for Alex. I'm just wondering if you are tracking the engagement of your outreach through radio, social media, through local newspapers, and if so, how are you looking at the data of engagement?
Absolutely. So for example, with the radio underwriting, Tyler Lucas, who is kind of, you know, in charge of getting that off the ground and editing that, because there's a lot of federal regulations with underwriting, but he provided me with statistics on their listening, which that was for last year. So it may not be entirely relevant to what's happening now, but that is one thing I'm looking at. That's kind of how we chose our times, all that. And he is going to be able to provide me certain listening demographics over time. Maybe, you know, how many people we could have reached. Yeah, but that is not something I've received yet. Yeah, I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No, you did, man. Thank you so much. You did great.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the surveys and interviews, obviously, that's a much easier thing for us to record and things like that. The demographics might be a challenge. I think, yeah, not everyone is entirely open to always sharing those, unfortunately. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question for Andy.
Talking to Butch Clark back at a banquet last year, he was telling me about how they used to have dances in the barn at the Cold Harbor Homestead. Is there any plans to maybe renovate that and start that going again?
Will there be dances? I think, I haven't talked about this particular point with Cold Harbor too much, but I think there should be. I would be a big proponent of that. I mean, a lot of the things that we've been talking about are, more well-structured events and programs. Like, on the one hand, you have things like the Design Build School that Claire Lancer worked on for her master's project, who just graduated. And that could be a really huge thing for the Valley, and you have that on one end of things. And then you have things like the Youth Regeneration Corps, and you have things like workshops held by different organizations together. And then there could be things like dances. And I would be a huge proponent of that. I mean, dancing is a huge community builder and a huge relationship builder and connector of people. So I think that would be amazing. I think at this point, while that hasn't been talked about, we have talked a lot about in terms of the construction on the property and multi-use space. That doesn't exist yet, but that multi-use space would have a large floor space for meetings and workshops. So yeah, I think we could probably make that happen.